You're now live on YouTube. Thank you.
Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Rushcliffe Borough Council Planning Committee meeting. This is the first actual physical meeting that we've had here for over a year. And in some ways it feels familiar, but in other ways it feels slightly strange because we're all having to sit a long way away from each other. As well as it being an actual meeting, we are also still virtual as well. It's a hybrid meeting, so there could well be people watching us on YouTube at home. And for members of the committee, you'll see there's cameras dotted around. The way the system works is when you are speaking, make sure your microphone is switched on by pressing the red light, the right-hand button, so the red light comes on, and that means that the cameras will point at you. So when you stop speaking, switch the microphone off, and then it points at whoever is speaking. I'm assured, I've just seen this on the screen, it's very clever. So we just need to bear that in mind. Anyway, so we'll get started. For members of the public who are with us in the chamber this evening and who are watching, I'm Councillor Richard Butler, the chairman of the committee. And with us this evening is Councillor Mrs. Stockwood, who is my vice chairman, and Councillors Clark, Goland, Healy, Major, Mason, Murray, Purdue, Horan, Thomas, and Verdi. Officers with us tonight are Mrs. Sells, who is the borough solicitor, Mr. Pegram, who is service manager for communities. So we go into the agenda, and I don't think there's any need for housekeeping rules as such. There's obviously no fire alarms planned, so if they go off, then it's probably for real. And so the first item on the agenda, please, is apologies for absence. Any substitute members, please.
Thank you, Chairman. There are no apologies this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have item 2, which is anyone have any declarations of interest to give, either under the Code of Conduct or under the Planning Code? I suspect not. No. Okay, thank you. And then we have the minutes of the previous meeting. In actual fact, it's minutes of 2 previous meetings, because you'll recall that the meeting on the 8th of April, we ran out of time to discuss all the items, so we had to call a second part of that meeting on the 22nd of April. So for those of us who are here, are we happy that those are correct? I think yes, and which also reminds me, actually, when it comes, another housekeeping thing, when it comes to actually voting on tonight's items, we've been asked that we actually have to show our hands as well. So as well as the electronic voting, we have to show our hands for the benefit of the video, the camera. Oh, I beg your pardon, we're not doing electronic, so we have to show our hands anyway. So, so thank you for that. It's this new world we're in, which is okay. Right, so we'll come on to the main reason for being here tonight, and that's to discuss tonight's planning applications. The first thing I should say as well, if you look at your agenda, the first item that we're due to be discussing this evening was overgrown acres in Normanton-on-the-Wolds. Hopefully you have all received a note saying that because of numerous representations and extra information and research that needs to be carried out on this application, we will not be discussing that application tonight. It will come to a further or to a future meeting. So that means that the first application on tonight's meeting is 1 Greenlee's West Bridgeford, and this is a 2-storey side and rear extension, single-storey rear extension, and a new front porch. And Mr. Pegram, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I do still have to share my screen, so if you'll bear with me for the benefit of the people at home watching at home, I will share the screen. So, Chairman, yes, the first item, as you say, is in relation to 1 Greenlee's West Bridgeford. It's a detached property which sits on the corner of Compton Acres and Greenlee's, outlined in red, as you can see on the screen. That's the aerial photograph, again showing you the property in relation to Compton Acres and Greenlee's and in the context of the wider area. These are obviously take you through some photographs. This is looking along Compton Acres in a generally westerly direction, and the application property is this one here. If we move closer in as we walk along the pavement, again, this is the property in question. and closer in again. And then, as I say, now stood pretty much opposite the property on the opposite side of the road. And then turning around slightly to look at the property behind the trees here. You will see from this photograph, from other photographs in a moment, that there is an existing single-storey extension on the side of the property, which is a garage and a room at the rear of the garage. And then turning again slightly around now, looking northeasterly, that's property on the opposite side of Greenlee's, and this is Compton Acres. There's a electricity substation at the rear of the property, so the property's boundary wall is this one you can see here. And then again, just walking a bit further along Compton Acres, looking back at the property. So the property is actually behind these trees, and that's the electricity substation you just saw in the previous picture. That stood on the application, on the side of the application property. So this is the junction of Compton Acres and Greenlee's. And then looking head on at the property, and now you can see the existing single-storey garage to the side of the property. That's showing the relationship with Compton Acres. And then again, looking through at the side elevation of the property as it currently stands. And again, different view of that. And then a closer view across the back of the property from that electricity substation. We now move into the property. This is stood in the bottom corner of the garden, and you can see the single-storey extension that exists on the property. There is an existing conservatory that would be replaced or demolished and replaced by the proposed extension. Another view of that conservatory. You will see that, and it's referred to in the report, there is a slight step forward. This property sits slightly further forward than the rear elevation of the neighbouring property. And then again, looking at that single-storey extension, that would be demolished to make way for the proposal. Looking head on at the back of the property. And then if we move to the front, you will see in the proposal, or in the plans in the moment, there is a proposal to enlarge the parking area at the front of the property. That element does not form part of this application. It's not included in the description of development. It's described on the plans as porous, so that would constitute permitted development and wouldn't require planning permission, providing it is permeable or drains to a permeable surface. And then just another look across the front of the property. There is also, as part of the proposal, a porch on the front of the property. Moving into the neighbour's property, so this is now in the garden of number 3. Looking across, that's the shared boundary between the two properties. That's the conservatory you saw in the previous picture. Then stepping back a bit, looking at the relationship between those two properties. And then looking at the rear of number 3. And again, standing adjacent to the rear wall, looking across the back of the two properties to that conservatory and where the proposed extension would be. So those plans show you the property as you've just seen it. That's the existing elevations and floor plans. And the proposal before you this evening is for a single and 2-storey extension together with a porch on the front elevation. So the 2-storey extension would be on the side. And obviously from the rear, that's the rear elevation. And then the single-storey extension would be this section here, which effectively is across the back of the existing 2-storey dwelling. In terms of some dimensions for you, Chairman, the extension would project out from the rear elevation here by 3.8 metres. The total depth of the 2-storey extension on the side at ground floor level is just over 12 metres, and it steps back at first floor level. So at first floor level, it's just over 11 metres. So you've got that setback there of 1 metre. Main windows are front and rear. The only windows on the side are 2 windows which serve an en-suites and a door at the ground floor level. Chairman, this one is obviously the main considerations for you in determining this application are the design and the appearance of the extension, the impact on the character of the area, and the impact on the amenities of the neighbouring residential property. In terms of the design, Chairman, the extension is set back, it's stepped down at this point. That complies with the guidance which is in our residential design guide, designed to make an extension subordinate to the original dwelling. Would be constructed in matching materials, window proportions, etc., are in keeping with the existing property. To the rear, the single-storey extension sits across the rear of the building, as I said. In terms of the wider area, Chairman, the property is considered, the resultant property would be considered to be in keeping or sympathetic to the surrounding area. In terms of the impact on the neighbouring property, Chairman, this is the proposed relationship and layout. Top of the plan is north, so obviously the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. The two-storey element, which is quite often the element which causes most problem in terms of overshadowing or overbearing impacts, is set off away from the boundary, as you can see from that plan. So that's set off some 6 or 7 metres from the boundary. As I always say, Chairman, all development has some impact. It's likely there may be some impact in terms of loss of light, particularly in the winter months when the sun is lowest in the sky. But on this occasion, Chairman, given that separation distance and the presence of the single-storey extension adjacent to the boundary, your officers don't consider that this proposal would result in unacceptable impacts to the neighbouring property. On the basis of all that, the application is before you with a recommendation to grant planning permission. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pegram. And also, colleagues, can I confirm as well that you have received some late representations on this application, which came through earlier on today. And we have 2 speakers from a member of the public and the ward member to speak on this item. So first of all, Mr. Ali, if you're with us, if you come up to the table just there. And you have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. If you're still talking when 5 minutes is up, we have to tell you the 5 minutes is up. So as soon as you're ready, you can start addressing us, and we'll switch the microphone on for you.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to represent myself, and I want it to be noted for the record that the planning officers and the department have been very firm but very fair with my application. Now, I've got family that live within the borough on Stowe Avenue, Harrow Road and Waddington Drive. I've been looking for quite a while to move into the area for several reasons, because as a family we want to be close to my sisters and my brothers. I've got an elderly father, and this particular property allows me to cater for his needs by having a downstairs bedroom and downstairs bathroom. And then the further bedrooms upstairs will allow, I've got 1 child, that allow me and my wife to actually grow our family, good schoolings. And when I instructed the architect, I did say to him, you know, I don't want you to make it absolutely massive. I want everything in keeping. I want absolutely minimum impact to my neighbours. I've got no intentions of, you know, moving on. This is my forever home. I'll stay here until however long my life is here. So the architect has worked with the planning officers, and the design they've come up with, it's proportionate to the existing building, and there's a vast piece of land to the left-hand side. Now, the double-storey side extension on the front elevation is set back 1 metre. I took a steady walk the other day, and I counted either 21 or 25 double-storey side extensions on that particular road, and a lot of them are actually flush on the ground floor and the first floor, and some of them only set back 250 mil, which is 1/4 of a metre, and some are set back 500 mil, 1/2 a metre. Mine is set back 1 metre. Now, my father's into gardening and stuff like that, so we've kept as much garden as possible, and any trees or bushes that are disturbed, they'll be replanted. Regarding the rear elevation, the conservatory will be taken down, and the single story across the back will be, I think it's about the same sort of size. Now, regarding overlooking and shadowing, I've called in a friend who's a surveyor, and the structural engineer Barry, and he's actually looked into this, and there is like no there is very, very little shadowing and overlooking into my neighbour's property. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That's well within your 5 minutes. So thank you very much for that. And our other speaker in a moment will be one of the local ward members, Councillor Phillips. We're just preparing the table and microphone. So Councillor Phillips is speaking on the application as well. And as you know, we're just cleaning the microphone. So again, you have up to 5 minutes. So the right-hand button on the microphone will come on.
Thank you. I object to this application on the grounds of the detrimental effect it will have on the neighbouring property of number 3 Greenlees. The rear of number 3 is north facing, meaning the garden area, and in this case, slabbed area nearest the property will catch little to no sunlight. I speak from experience as I live in a property that has a north facing rear garden. Paved areas become black and mossy. The photos show this to be the case, and even after pressure jet washing. Photo AP1, it's on the screen now. This was taken from the rear of number 3 and is looking in an easterly direction. It shows how number 5 Greenlees curves around and creates a somewhat hemmed in effect from the east. When the sun rises, it is hidden behind the property of number 5, meaning number 3 receives no sun, only shade and some shadowing. Only when the sun is high in the sky and moved to the south does number 3 start to receive sunlight, only then at the bottom and middle of the garden. You can see in the photo a 2-storey extension on number 5 that was objected to by the owners of number 3, but planning was granted. This extension also added to the loss of light and the hemmed in effect it has now created. Photo AP2. This was taken from the rear of number 3 and is looking in a westerly direction. In the picture, you can see a broken upright paving slab, which indicates where the extension will come to the left of that slab, that is. There is also a marker pole which shows the height of the single-storey extension, which at this point is approximately 8.5 feet. From here, the roof slopes upwards to a height of just over 13 feet and is only 2.7 feet away from the boundary fence. Directly behind the single-storey extension will be the 2-storey extension at a height of 17 feet with a further 5.3 feet in height of a sloping roof on top of that. This gives a total height of 22 feet. As the sun moves around and starts to set in the west, this extension, if allowed, will totally block out the sun from reaching the paved area of number 3. The extension, if allowed, will cast a shadow over number 3 and it will be hemmed in from both sides, which is totally unacceptable. Photo AP3. This photo is taken from a small extension from the inside of number 3, looking west towards number 1. If the application is allowed, there will be a loss of light into this room. The small extension can also be seen from the outside on photo AP1. In summary, if this application is allowed, it would have a negative impact on the property owners of number 3 Greenlees. The application is not in keeping with the way the original properties were laid out and built. It would cause considerable loss of light, increase shadowing, and become too overbearing. My photos clearly demonstrate the hemmed-in effect this application will cause. Therefore, it is unacceptable and should be rejected on these grounds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. So that's our final guest speaker on this item. So we heard from Mr. Ali, who is the applicant, who told us that that planning officers have been firm but fair with him, and he wants the extension very much for family reasons. It says he instructed the architect to keep it in keeping and have as minimum impact on neighbours as possible. And he also says that there are other properties in the area that have similar extensions, and some aren't stepped back quite as far. And he told us that trees and bushes that may be taken up will be replanted. And he says as well that he took advice on shadowing, overshadowing and overlooking impact. And then we heard from Councillor Phillips, who objects. He says it's not in keeping with the area and the layout, and in particular will have an overbearing impact on number 3 because of north-facing garden, and it will get little to no sunlight. And he showed us some photographs to help that point of view, and also told us there was a recent extension on number 5, which has also had an impact on number 3, which he feels will be hemmed in or feel hemmed in as a result of this application. I think that's covered everything. Do we want to come back on any of this, Mr. Pegram, or should we?
Very little, Chairman. I just one point probably to make on this is the extension, as you saw, was single story in this position, 2-story here. Worth perhaps noting that a single story extension only in that position, as I'm indicating, straight off the back of the property of the size that is currently proposed, could be constructed under permitted development. So the only reason it needs permission in this instance is because it's linked in with an extension which runs around the side of the property. And again, the distance to the boundary is around about 6 or 7 metres. So it might be more than that, actually. At that point, it's about 6 or 7 metres, Chairman. So obviously the 2-story element is set away from the boundary. Yes, in the winter may cause some impact on overshadowing when the sun is lower, but obviously we heard when the sun is higher in the sky, there is sun in the rear of this garden. So thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pegram. Right, colleagues, we're ready to discuss and debate and come to a decision on this. Would anyone like to? Or are we quite clear on what's happening? Oh, sorry. Yes, when you indicate to speak, you need to really make it clear by sticking your hand up. So, Councillor Thomas, please.
Do I have to push any buttons at this point? No. Oh, right, okay, thank you. I was just going to ask about the single story section. How much taller is it than the existing first floor, as it were? And how does that relate to permitted development in terms of adding the height onto a single story extension, if you see what I mean? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The extension would be about 2.55 metres at the eaves. At the point where it joins the house, it would be 3.97 metres. A single story extension can be constructed under permitted development, which is no more than 4 metres out from the rear of the house. So, as I say, the single story element that, if it were in isolation, could be done under permitted development.
Does that help, Councillor Thomas? Okay, thank you. Councillor Clark and then Councillor.
Right, thank you. Finally got there. Sorry. I just really want to just clarify this potential overshadowing of the 2-story element. I understand about the single-story element PDR, but have we actually got any sort of angles of sunshine as to what proportion roughly of the patio next door is likely to incur shadow? You know, when the sun is setting in the east.
Have we?
Chairman, no, we haven't got a sun path diagram. We very rarely use sun path diagrams. We would use judgment, obviously. We use the 45-degree rule in terms of two-storey extensions in particular. So if we go back to, that's the rear of the neighbouring property. So the closest aperture to the boundary are these French doors. So if you were to apply the 45-degree rule, you would take a line from the centre of those doors at 45 degrees out. If the two-storey extension were to bisect that 45-degree line, then that might be an indicator that there'd be a degree of overshadowing or unacceptable overshadowing and overbearing. In this instance, we haven't got the line on there, but I'm confident that a line drawn at 45 degrees from that position would not be bisected by the two-storey element. Clearly, this extension, and indeed the existing property, would not have, in my view, any impact on sunlight and daylight until the latter part of the afternoon, early evening, when the sun comes round to this sort of position. And as I say, in the summer, the sun would be at the highest in the sky. It may, I can't say, not at all, may cast a little bit of shadow, possibly, but in our view, it wouldn't be so unacceptable as to warrant refusal of this application.
Well, it wasn't so much the 45 I was talking about, because that's sort of a lateral angle. It's the angle from the roof going down onto the patio that's what I meant by the proportion of the patio that's likely to be overshadowed. But and obviously each day of the year, the sun sets at a different height throughout the year. So and I appreciate it's very difficult to establish that. And it is regressively going to be difficult for those who are on the patio, because clearly there is going to be some overshadowing. I have sympathy with the ward member as regards, the houses were originally set out as they were, and in theory that's how they should be. But the reality of human nature is we're bound to get applications for extensions. Whilst I have sympathy, I do fear that I don't think an objection sustainable enough can be created to create a sustainable objection. So I'll move the recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. So you're moving the recommendations as per the report. Councillor Mason, you wanted to speak.
Yes, thank you. I was asking going to ask a similar question as Councillor Clark, but I do see that there could be some, but I think I'm quite happy with this, so I'd like to second the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we have a recommendation in the report, which has been moved and seconded by Councillor Clark and seconded by Councillor Mason. Councillor Healy, sorry, you want to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Just clarification rather than anything else. The side extension, I'm just wondering how close that is going to be to the main road, to the wall on Compton Acres. Or how far out it's coming from the existing building. The other concern I've got, and it's come up in our notes, is regarding the sewage and sewage pipes, which it would appear will end up under certainly this extension. I'm just wondering what obligations we have there in terms of access, etc. And my final point really is, I mean, it's a very tight corner between Greenlee and Compton Acres. The property is right on the corner. Parking is going to be on the front of the property. And if we were to grant permission, I think we would need a condition whereby those cars would drive off the property forward rather than reversing and causing potential problems. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. Well, while Mr. Pegram looks at the distance or confirms the distance from the edge of the property to the road, I think the issue of the sewage pipes, which are in the report, is not really for us to decide, because that's very much a civil arrangement between the properties and people involved, interested, and also the likes of Severn Trent, although it is referred to in the report. And then your suggestion about the parking and reversing on the drive. Well, there weren't any, I think I know what we're going to say here, there weren't any comments from the Highways Department about that, about any suggestions, but can you confirm that, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I won't reiterate your comments about the sewage pipes. That's exactly what I was going to say. In terms of the distances of the side of the property, obviously the existing single-storey extension would be demolished. So we're working off the side of the two-storey element. The extension would project off the side by 4.1 metres. And at this point, it would be 4.7 metres to the wall. And at this point, it would be 4.65 metres to the wall. So it is set in by quite a good margin. In terms of the concern you had about the reversing on or off the driveway, as I said at the beginning, the work here does not form part of this application. That work can be undertaken as permitted development and is not included in the description. So in this instance, we wouldn't have consulted Highways because there are no highway implications in terms of the subject matter of the application, which is the extensions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Is that helpful, Councillor Healy?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, we've had a discussion. We've looked at the arguments in favour and against. We've had the recommendation moved and seconded. I think unless anyone is desperate to say anything else, I think we can go to a decision on this. So, Mrs. Sells, please.
So by show of hands, all those in favour, so it's the recommendation to grant. If you can show your hands, please. I make that 11. Just all those against. So it's unanimous. So motion carries.
Thank you, Mrs. Sells. So, and thank you, Councillor Clark and Mr. Ali for attending. But permission is granted as per. What did I say, Councillor Clark? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Phillips. I'm sorry. Thank you for attending, and permission is granted as per the report. Thank you. I only said that. I'm just checking you were listening.
You were on mute.
Oh right, was I? Okay. Right. Well done for spotting that deliberate mistake. So we'll go on to our next application now. Councillor Thomas is stepping down from the committee for this item because she's a ward member, and this is 19 Damson Road, East Leek, and it's the erection of a detached double garage. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as you say, this is an application for a detached double garage. The property sits on a relatively new development off of Woodgate Road in the southwestern part of the village. Total of 80 dwellings constructed on this site. The one we are looking at tonight is the one here, which is outlined in red. So the existing property is a semi-detached property which aspects across its driveway and parking area at the front. The adjoined part of the pair aspects out looking in a sort of easterly direction across the turning head. The proposal is for a detached double garage. As originally submitted, it was proposed to be about 9.7 metres wide. Through negotiations, it has been reduced in size. The proposal now is for a garage which is approximately 6.7 metres wide, 6.7 metres deep, 2.4 metres to the eaves and 5.6 metres to the ridge. So that's the proposal you are considering this evening. Just run through some photographs. One of the areas of concern you would have noted, Chairman, in the report is in relation to the proximity of the garage to the top of a railway cutting. So this is the Heritage Railway that runs through to Loughborough, I think it is. And the garage would sit quite close to the top of the cutting. And there's concern about the potential impact on the destabilising effect it may have on the embankment. I'll come back to that in just a second. So that's a closer view. So the garage would sit roughly in this area here, where I'm indicating. This is the property in question. So this is the turning head. That's the neighbouring property that looks out across the turning head. The application property is here, looking this way, and the garage would go in roughly this location. That's a closer view of the arrangement. And then just looking across, adjacent to the site, there is an area of open space. So that's the proposal, as I've said, which is before you this evening. Detached double garage. I've given you the dimensions, so I won't repeat those. Clearly, Chairman, the issue here is regarding design, scale and appearance of the garage. It has been negotiated to reduce it in size, and your officers are satisfied that it is now of appropriate design and appearance. Just in terms of the impact on the railway embankment, Chairman, you'll see in paragraph 28 of the report, we have gone to our building control officers on this matter and sought their advice. Ground stability can potentially be a material planning consideration, but having spoken with or consulted the building control officers, the advice is that providing the foundations are below the angle of repose or the angle of frictional retained material, and I suspect someone's going to ask me what that means, it shouldn't present a problem. The garage is of a size, it's over 30 square metres, so it would require building regulations approval, and you will see a note to applicant, which basically draws to their concern, to their attention, the concerns about the stability issues and the fact they must be addressed through the building regulations application. Chairman, it's to say we consider this to be an acceptable proposal in terms of scale, appearance, and design.
Thank you, Mr. Pegram. Yeah, they keep fading in and out automatically, but technology. Right, we have Councillor Thomas, ward member, would like to speak to us on this, please. So as soon as you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Chair. To my mind, there are four main issues here. The first is the appearance and size of the building. Number two, the future use of the building. Number three, management of surface water. And number four, positioning at the edge of the railway cutting. As far as appearance and size are concerned, detached garages on the estate are close to the houses, but this one would be set apart. The building would be in a very prominent position at the top of the site and wider and taller than any of the other garage buildings. Type LCC5, mentioned in paragraph 24 of the officer report, is the largest existing type. And as far as I can see, there is only one LCC5 on the site. It has two single garages for two houses and is set well back to the rear of the house. A note that condition 4 should address fears that the building could be used as a separate dwelling or for commercial purposes. I see that condition 5 requires details of the method of surface water disposal to be provided, which addresses this issue. My greatest concern, also an objection by Great Central Railway, is the matter of the stability of the railway cutting. At this point, it is deep and steep. A landslide here could have fatal results and a potential disaster if a train was passing. During the application process for the estate, there were extensive discussions about this issue with the ward member at the time, who has an engineering background. This particular house, plot 48, was the focus of the discussion. There were diagrams produced showing angles with respect to foundations, etc. The outcome was that plots 42 to 48 were moved further away from the cutting. This garage building would be closer to the edge than any other building. Paragraph 28 of the officer report suggests that foundations could be designed safely and that this will be dealt with by building control. The draft decision notice includes an advisory note suggesting that the applicant should bring this matter to the attention of the building inspector. If the committee is minded to approve the application, I request that rather than an advisory note, a pre-commencement condition is added to approve the foundation design and construction method to ensure there is no risk of destabilising the cutting. This precaution would be a similar situation to the extra condition added on the Ruddington application at the last meeting, which you can see on page 38 of your papers, condition 15. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, just rapidly writing down my notes here. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Very clear. So the four main issues or concerns are the appearance and size of the proposal, the potential use of the building, surface water management, and the worry about the impact on the railway cutting and the stability thereof, and also the request that if we are minded to grant permission, that we don't just have an advisory about the reporting back on the foundations and the stability of the cutting, but also have a pre-commencement condition request, and which is something we've done on similar applications. Do you want to come back on any of those, please?
Just a couple of points of clarification, Chairman. In terms of the management of surface water, the applicant's agent has confirmed that surface water would be directed to the storm sewer, so the existing surface water system. And you'll note that condition 5 in the papers addresses this issue. In terms of the future use of the building that was referred to, again, you'll see there's a condition condition 4, which requires that the garage is used for purposes ancillary to the residential use of the property, 19 Damson Road. In terms of the impact on the cutting, Chairman, the railway cutting, the condition that Councillor Thomas referred to, members may recall, was one that I recommended in relation to a non-designated heritage asset where excuse me, where they were looking to remove the lower section of a gable wall to create some undercroft parking. And that was a case of trying to ensure that when they did that, the building didn't basically fall down. Slightly different issue, Chairman. Clearly, all conditions that we impose on planning permission have to satisfy the tests, which include tests of reasonableness, necessity, and relevance. The guidance generally, Chairman, is that we shouldn't seek to duplicate the controls under other legislation. This will require building regulations approval. I've already spoken with the building control surveyors, and they would be aware that the garage would need to take account of the railway cutting and would look at that issue as part of their consideration of any such application. Chairman, on that basis, I do not consider that a pre-commencement condition requiring the design of the foundations to be submitted would be necessary, which is one of the tests. And in any event, we would simply send that to building control for their verification of it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And building control are interested anyway, so it would be duplicating what the arrangements that would be in place anyway. Right. Can I just ask? Is there a garage for this property already?
No, Chairman. It's open parking, basically.
Right. I just wanted to clarify that there is. It's not as if it's an additional garage. So fine. Okay. Right. Would anyone like to ask any questions or make any comments, please? Councillor Mason.
Thank you. Just to ask about a business being run from there, because you do see houses where they've got cars of various ages on the front and working in that garage. Could you just repeat what you said? And I tried to sort of write it down, and a condition about not being able to run a business from it, so that there were things, the garage was full of things and it was also out on the front as well. Could you just repeat what?
Well, yes, I'm sure Mr. Pegram will. Perhaps recommendation.
I'm trying to. It's not that long a report, I know. But,
on page 88, the garage shall not be used at any time other than for purposes ancillary to residential use, etc.
Yes, thank you.
Anything to add?
Just one further point of clarification, Chairman. Clearly, this is a matter which has caused some concern in relation to comments received, particularly from the ward councillors. Yes, we've put that condition on. If there were a proposal to use this building for a commercial purpose that amounted to a material change of use, we would have control as planning authority. As you know, we've got enforcement officers who will check on such issues. Clearly, just to clarify though, I've been working at home for the last year a lot. That doesn't necessarily result in a material change of use of my dwelling where I live. So it is a matter of fact and degree. So if there were concerns that the building were being used for commercial purposes, we would have to investigate, we'd have to establish the matter of fact and degree. Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, Councillor Mason, can you switch your microphone off as well, please?
Well, I was just going to add, if I can, that I would like to support the recommendation that planning permission is granted subject to the conditions. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Mason. We won't try to cut you off, I promise you. Right, thank you. So you've moved the recommendation. Councillor Major indicated to speak. Councillor Major.
I'm happy to second the recommendation. I was going to move it forward. I think you've allayed my concerns around the structural integrity and the potential effect it could have on the cutting. That seems in hand. And equally, I think given that the materials are aligned to the existing building, I can't see this being dramatically out of character for the rest of the estate. So I'm very happy to second that recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Golan, did you want to come in? And
yes.
then Councillor Clark.
Thanks. Given that at the time the estate was built, apparently this was considered too close to the railway line, is it conceivable to understand the situation that building control could eventually stop this happening if they consider it's likely to cause damage to the railway line?
Chairman, my understanding of the situation with building regulations is obviously they need to ensure that the structural integrity of any building that is constructed is sound. They obviously have to have regard for health and safety matters associated with any person using that building. And as I say, from the discussions I've had, I'm not an expert on this issue. I can't profess to be, but we have gone to building regulations and they are satisfied that there is a solution that could be applied here, which would ensure that the building and the ground around it maintains its structural integrity.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I indicated to ask another question, but just as a supplementary to Councillor Gowland's, does Mr. Pegram's comments in response, does building control also take into account impact of a construction method on neighbouring properties rather than actually on the site itself? In other words, they might think it's fine building the garage as it is, but does it also take into account the consequences of a problem that it might end up sliding down the embankment? My original question was going to be, and you, Mr. Pegram, used the phrase when, Chairman, you asked about whether there's a garage there. No, the parking was, I think you said open parking, I think the phrase you used. So it's unusual for a house of this sort of standard not to have a garage. Therefore, that to me begs the question, was there a design brief for the estate when it was built that precludes building coming further than the line of those houses? In other words, was there supposed to be a protected open space in effect? And are we actually breaching what a design brief might have deemed to be an open aspect?
Thank you. Yes, a similar thought had been going through my mind, I have to say, because there must be a reason or why there wasn't a garage there in the first place. Do we know that?
No, Chairman, I did check the plans for this estate. In this particular area, it was originally proposed to be a terrace of 3 dwellings facing out onto the open space that you can see in the picture there. The buildings seem to be in a similar sort of position or proximity to the railway embankment. There was no design brief as such for this estate. There probably was a design and access statement. But even if there were a design brief, in my view, that wouldn't necessarily preclude future extensions and alterations to buildings or new buildings on the site. And it would be a matter of considering those applications on their merits in terms of whether or not they caused any adverse impact to the character and appearance of the area. So in this instance, this is the area, when I refer to open parking, yes, it's basically parking on a driveway. This is the driveway. There's a fence running through here, you can see, but this is the main area of open space. And in my view, that garage doesn't impede on that open space or detract from the openness and the character of the estate. In terms of the building regulations question, I have to say, Chairman, I'm not entirely au fait with every aspect of the building regulations, but clearly, as I said, they do take into account certain impacts on neighbouring properties. So, for instance, proximity of buildings to boundaries and spread of fire. And the building regulations would have to, as I say, take into account and ensure that the building could be constructed in such a way as to maintain its structural integrity. And that would include ensuring, in this case, that the footings were deep enough so they didn't slide down the hill, in my view. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Clark.
Well, Chairman, I was just in view of the ward members' comments that implied that basically the design of the estate brought the buildings further away from the embankment than first was perhaps proposed. Why are we suggesting that it's okay to build a building which appears to me to be proposed within the area or the zone that was previously deemed to be a, if I use the word, danger zone, if you like?
Chairman, Councillor Thomas, the ward councillor, referred to discussions with the previous ward councillor. I did have a look at the history file for this one. I couldn't find any substantive issues or in the documents I read that suggested that the buildings were necessarily pulled away for that purpose, not in terms of our involvement as planning officers. So whether those discussions were outside of the planning or with the developers themselves, I don't know. But as I say, at the end of the day, this is a matter where I've been reassured by the building control surveyors that it is possible to build this building. I can only bow to their superior knowledge on that matter.
Thank you. Councillor Major.
Yeah, just to follow up, I think I could see why those conversations would happen when you're talking about a line of maybe 10 or 15 houses along that boundary where the cutting is. Obviously, that's going to have a much greater impact potentially than a single building at this particular point along, which is set quite apart from the main building. So I'm not so concerned about any sort of development having an impact on neighbouring properties, because there aren't really neighbouring properties particularly close to that. So personally, I'm comfortable that even if conversations were had back in the day when the site was being developed, you're talking about building 20 houses along the cutting at that point, and not a single, albeit substantial, but it's not ridiculous, double garage in this case. So for me, I don't think that's an issue at this point.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Right, so we've had the recommendation moved and seconded as per the report, and we've had some clarification on the involvement of building control. I think I don't think anyone else has wanted to come back. And no, actually, just one question. Behind the car there, the fence, there appears to be a shed. Is that, I presume, is that on the embankment, do we know? It's not part of the curtilage of the property, or do we know that? It is their garden, is it?
It's Chairman, their curtilage effectively runs along there and then up through there and then down along there. So that's part of their garden. It does sit in their garden.
Fine. I just wanted to check on that. Right. Okay. So we've. I don't think there's any more comments or questions. So, Mr. Sells, please.
Thank you. So the motion is as per officer recommendation, no additional conditions. All those in favour? Who am I missing? Oh, sorry.
You're missing
Councillor
Councillor Thomas.
Thomas, sorry. Oh, I can't cope. That's 10-4, so it's unanimous, so the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you
So permission is granted as per the recommendation. Councillor Thomas rejoins the committee. Now, when we first arrived here this evening, it was too warm. I wonder if it's getting too cold now. So shall we turn the air conditioning off? I mean, normally I'm one of the ones who loves being cooled down, but even I'm feeling chilly. So and I saw some coats going on, scarves going on. I got the hint. Okay, so right, so we'll go on to our next application, which I think is the final one for this evening. This is a borough application. This is the playing fields on the corner of Boundary Road and Loughborough Road, and which is Councillor Major is still with us. She's just stretching her legs. She's still in the room, and this is to upgrade and remodel the existing bike track there. There we go. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, yes, I beg your pardon. Yes, I'll clarify that. Councillor Major is a ward member, so she is standing down from this item, not just stretching her legs. Right, so just to make that clear, so Mr. Peggle, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as you point out, this is a borough application, so in accordance with the council's constitution, it comes before the committee for determination. The application relates to the park, which is on the corner of Loughborough Road here and Boundary Road. You'll see from the photographs there's an existing play park, and there is a sort of cycle track which comprises a number of earth mounds. So you can see actually the cycle track in that position there that exists at the moment. That's the existing parking area, play area.
It's the cold bit there.
Yes, properties on Musters Road there, and then obviously, that's Repton. Sorry, it's Repton Road, Chairman. Yes, thank you. And the properties to the north, which front onto Loughborough Road. So just looking around the site, this is looking from the southern edge of the park. The site does obviously, as members will probably be aware, slope down in a northerly direction. So that's the closest property to the north, which fronts onto Loughborough Road. There's a teen shelter in this location, and then just off of screen is the existing play park. That's starting to turn round now, so we're picking up those properties on Repton Road. Again, turning further round, looking in an easterly direction generally. Now looking back up towards Boundary Road. So this is the property immediately adjacent to the site fronting Boundary Road. And these are the sort of existing humps that form the cycle track at the moment. That's the existing play park, and you can see one of the cycle track humps in this location, Loughborough Road in that location there. This is stood on Boundary Road looking in a northerly direction just outside the site. So this is a sort of vehicle maintenance access. There would be a temporary roadway constructed across the field during the construction process of the cycle track, but that would be removed afterwards. And then just standing outside the site looking up Boundary Road, across the road to the properties opposite, turning around again, and then looking from Loughborough Road across an area of open space to where the park is. And again, just in that similar position, looking at the junction with Boundary Road and Loughborough Road. This is down on the northern boundary, so this is one of the accesses into the park. That's the property you saw in some of the earlier photographs. And then turning around, looking in a southerly direction up the slope towards Boundary Road and the existing cycle humps in the foreground. So that's the application site. So there would be a temporary roadway put in there for the construction process. That would be the area where the cycle track would be proposed, and there would be an asphalt path provided linking the existing play area with the cycle track. There's two elements to the cycle track. There's what they call a pump track, which is that area I'm indicating there. And then there would be a learner track in this location here, and there would be earth mounds and contouring to create excitement and interest for the users, I think, as I've put it. That's a close-up of the details of the track in question. And then in terms of the contours, I won't go through all these in detail. These are obviously presented on a dead flat plane, but would effectively follow the contours of the site. And you'll see that we have recommended a condition just to require final details of those levels once they are known and in terms of the contours of the site. But effectively, the highest pump would be about 1.5 metres. As I say, is intended as a pump track there with the learner track. Chairman, this does fit in with our leisure strategy as well. It's a proposal to improve leisure facilities in the area. There are some concerns about disturbance and noise from use of the facility. Clearly, it is an existing park. There is an existing teen shelter which doesn't form part of this application, but this is considered to be an acceptable proposal to enhance one of our local facilities for local youngsters. On that basis, Chairman, it's before you with a recommendation to grant permission. Thank you.
Thank you. And we don't have any speakers on this, so we can go straight to Councillor Clark, please.
I think Mr. Pegram's comments were just the apt comments, really. Complying with the strategy, it will be a great asset. There's no problem with it as far as I can see. I'll move it.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder for this one, Councillor Goland? And do you wish to add anything, or you're happy? Right. So proposal is moved and seconded, and we have noted the concerns, because the general feedback has been positive, but there are one or two comments about worries about things like antisocial behaviour, which is perfectly understandable to have those, but I think they've been addressed. Anyone else wish to speak, or shall we make a decision? No. Oh, Mr. Pegram. Yeah.
Jim, just to pick up on those points you made, yes, there are some concerns. They largely sit outside of this application, but clearly are matters within the control of the Borough Council. They have been passed on to the relevant manager so that they can keep an eye on those issues and address them as appropriate. Thank you, Jim.
Oh, yeah.
To address those issues, I think to say that I do consider those issues, and this is a park already, teenagers will already congregate there. This will add to the teenagers and hopefully not detract too much from local residents.
Thank you. And the fact that there is facilities here which are designed for youngsters to play and socialise. Right, okay. Mrs. Selt, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So it's the recommendation as per the report, no additional conditions. All those in favour? So that's 10-4, so it's unanimous, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to confirm that permission is granted unanimous. Right, that's the final application tonight. We don't have any appeal notices, so thank you very much. It's a very brief meeting this evening. Oh, Councillor Clark.
Chairman, I don't know if it is, if I'm correct, this is your last planning committee meeting?
Yes.
As chairman.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Can we just record our thanks for your excellent chairmanship over, I don't know how many years it is, but however many years it is, 4 years. So thank you very much indeed. Well done, and thank you for carrying out an excellent job.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you, Councillor Clark. And can I thank members of the committee as well? It's not an easy committee, and it's a very responsible committee that we're on here. And I was been doing it for the last few years, and I just felt that perhaps now, as it's halfway through where we are at the moment, I think we've done a lot, but perhaps it's time for a change of direction. So give someone else a chance to have a go. So thank you very much. And may I thank also Mr. Pegram and his colleagues as well, who've been very helpful with advice, and also have taken on board any problems, any issues we've had. They have been taken seriously, so I thank you for that. And
thank you, Chairman. Yes.
We watch with interest as we move on. So with that, we'll close the meeting. It's 7:33, and thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you.